Hi there. Welcome to the Sober Circle channel. Enjoy this speaker tape.
Well, it's been one of the fringe benefits of my sobriety to be able to attend these conventions. And a few months ago, I was at a convention in Fresno. A woman got up and she spoke for a couple of minutes. And I got some good vibes from her. And then later I talked to her on the phone and we corresponded. And I formally, officially met her here this evening, and I still get good vibes from her, and I'm sure you will too. About a nice warm hi for Sylvia M. from Berkeley.
Hi there. I'm a very, very grateful alcoholic and junkie, and my name just happens to be Sylvia.
Hi.
Hi. And I'm grateful to be here, safe, sober, and relatively sane, because I have not always been that way, and I may not be that way again. That's a little ritual that I've gone through for a long time, and it's real good to help me remember where I came from, and most importantly, where I'm going. I just really am just so excited and just so happy. I'm going to say something that may turn off some people, but in a way, I don't have any idea what I'm going to say. And I've heard if you really are a speaker, you never say that, because then people are thinking, oh, wow, what are we going to hear now? But this is different. This is another kind of, it's just different. It's another kind of world here in a way. And it's exciting, and it's I'm just having so much fun, and I just had another even greater thing happen that really took care of some humility for me, and it was really good. There was a man here that had asked me to talk at a meeting in San Francisco, and I have no recollection of it. I never showed up. Nothing ever transpired. I didn't even call up to say that, I broke a leg or what have you. I don't know what happened. I think what happened is I forgot to write it down. That sounds very simple, but I mean, if I don't write it down, it's gone, But anyway, that was good with all this high thing that I was feeling, and then for that to come about. He said he had to come up here to hear the story I was going to tell there, which I don't really believe, but anyway, it's okay. Okay, wait a minute. What time do we end?
10:30.
Oh, all right. I was going to say 9:30 is going to be awful fast. I'll have to give it to you in shorthand. Brush up on my shorthand or speed talking or something. Okay. I'm not going to read all this stuff here. It's kind of like a security thing to keep me from rambling. I just can't tell you just how grateful I am. I got to my room, and it was just beautiful. I was flown up here on a big plane, and this last week has been particularly rough at work. I mean, I have been given extra energy, but I overdid it this last week, and it was just really something. So I really came up which is a new thing for me, to really come up and just accept everything I'm going to get, and be able to just give away everything I'm going to give away, whatever it is, and just enjoy it. And that's not easy for me. I know how to suffer, I know how to be sad, and I don't have to be those things anymore. And it's just such a whole new world to be able to be just so happy to be alive. And then I walked into the Alano Club after I walked over from my room, and there was a man with his first contact in AA. I don't see him here, but all faces. I don't know. I hope he made it. He was supposed to. But that was just something, to run into somebody that had never had contact with AA before, and this would be their first experience. In a way, it's a little unfair because this is really unreal. It's bigger than life. It's not a regular meeting like we're having here, you know. But it's beautiful, whatever. Okay, here we go. There's Pat. There he is. What we were like, what happened, and what I'm like now. This all started, I suppose I was born, and then that started something. Although I feel that my one that I really had any choice with, although I really was choiceless. You know, you get far. This is my birthday month also, natal and AA, so it just really is just really exciting. And I'm not even a teenager yet. I'm just 12. But anyway, probably the first outside problems started manifesting themselves at 12. So pretty soon it's all going to balance out at some point. It already really has. In that the inventories I've taken since have been after AA. All my past, my sponsor has, and that's a wonderful feeling. And yet when I came here, I heard the term sponsor, and I just thought to myself, I don't need one. Don't want one, I don't need one. Never gave it another second thought. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Come from a fairly large family in this day and age of Planned Parenthood. There were 6 of us. I was the eldest. I have a sister and 4 brothers. And my mother was born in Mexico. My father was born in Arizona. And I was born in Los Angeles. So I'm a native Californian. I never was able to fit. I keep going to the right mic. I'm sorry over there. To fit in any kind of gatherings. I was a battered child and grew up hating my father. The first 2 people that you really relate to in life are mother and father. I'd already lost because I couldn't communicate with my father, so that just made things very difficult, especially with the opposite sex for some years, even after AA. I was able to forgive, truly, forgive my father, because it's a funny thing. We give away what we got. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Whatever we got, that's the way we give it away. And compared to him, I feel very fortunate, because he used to be whipped with a barbed wire. So I feel I was pretty lucky. This imbalance, I'm sure, had something to do with the emotional chaos that I was brought in, where with my father being so authoritative and my mother so loving, it created whatever it created. Anyway, I did not fit in school. I was given responsibility very early in the game because I was the eldest. I didn't realize it at the time, but as I look back on it, we were very poor. I just thought we were always broke. But there's a difference. Anyway, I was always the one that had to be responsible for my brothers and sister. It was not fun. It was so little fun that I was troubled for a long time in this program, especially when I had reach the catharsis of 4 and 5 that I was not able to remember hardly any of my childhood. It was a little frightening because, but then I got even on into adult life, and it may just be that was some kind of damage, some kind of, if nothing else, alcohol does play havoc with the memory cells, But I have been able to not have to worry so much. The stuff that I came off with was enough. Really, it took me 5 years to feel that I had 5 years and 10 inventories to feel that I had gotten rid of all the garbage of my past. And that was a whole new world after that. Anyway, I didn't fit in family gatherings. As far back as I could remember, I felt different. Nobody understood. I never was able to communicate, not even with my brothers who were also alcoholic and drug addicts. That was that's the way we coped with situations. But as far as really being able to open up and talk at any kind of gut level, that didn't happen until my sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. Through this terrified childhood, because I lived in abject terror of my father. I don't know whether my father is an alcoholic. I used to think I did when I first came into AA, when I used to think I knew who everyone was an alcoholic. I could know, I could tell. Not so. Not so. This isn't my father's story, really. I'm kind of balancing that way. But anyway, when I saw people drinking, everybody that I ever saw that drank got drunk. In the neighborhood where I was brought up, which was predominantly black, you drank for the effect. And usually there was fights, and there was police, and there was knifings, and there was all kinds of those things, plus the own inner violence we had just in our own house. But when my father would drink, he was nice. He'd buy us ice cream and do all these things. So I just loved it when he used to drink on the weekend. I didn't have to be afraid. It's when he wasn't drinking that it was so bad. But the reason I don't know whether he was is that he got a 502 some years back, maybe 20 years. And he's never driven a car since. I could never do that. No way. No way could I ever do that. It just, just that pride or whatever it was, I just didn't have it, to feel that was so degrading but not to quit drinking, to quit driving. But that took another kind of courage or whatever. But anyway, let me get to me. I had made my peace with all of my family, and it's a fantastic feeling. I didn't fit in school. I had wall-to-wall complexes, which did not make for a very good student. Yet I learned to read before I went to school on my own. I don't believe that I could take any credit. It was just a gift, so that you cannot, just like my sobriety. My sobriety is a gift. I look upon it as such. cannot become complacent. It's a gift, flat outright gift from the higher power that I now choose and can call Father, Mother, God. I didn't get into a whole lot of trouble outwardly. I went to juvenile hall when I was 14 and a half, not quite 15. And even there I was isolated from the rest of the population. That seems to be a thing that will follow me. I had not the courage to know how to surrender to anything. I know there were times when I was being whipped that if I would have said I did it, it would have stopped. But I couldn't. I just couldn't. There was just something inside. I don't know where it came from. My family, were law-abiding. I mean, we didn't have, they weren't gangsters where I was schooled with this inner kind of code. But it was innate of this thing that it was a sign of weakness, that I had to keep this front. I didn't know how to cry. I didn't know how to act feminine, act with passion, yes, but feminine or those kind of things, no. I didn't know the difference. All of this culminated with this thing of feeling different when something did happen at 12. I was hit by an automobile and thrown through the air with the greatest of ease. And the only thing I could think of is I was seeing this aerial picture of the ground going, I flew up higher than a telephone pole. And all I could think of as I was flying through the air is that somebody can see up my dress. God. Is that too much? That's just talk about unnatural obsession with self, But that's what the big book says was the root of my troubles, was self-centeredness. Anyway, from that accident, I grew 7 inches in 6 months in a convalescent home where I was compound fractures of the leg and multiple things, but I lived, I look back on it now, that was just the beginning. Maybe even some of the beatings I shouldn't have lived through. Because you hear of children dying, being beaten. But it just makes me know, and then after getting into the life, as it's called, God, what a misnomer that is, the life. Anyway, I'm talking about the life before AA. Anyway, I lost my place. Okay, right, okay. With the accident, it just proved to me physically what I had been feeling emotionally, that I was different. At this point, I was 5 feet tall and just a little girl that went in the hospital, and 6 months later I came out, for all intents and purposes, looking like a full-grown woman. And I no longer really didn't fit. My Chicana friends didn't like me because they thought I was trying to be something else. I don't know how they thought I could have made myself grow, But that's how it is when you have these feelings inside. If anyone, is... my mother had taught me not to speak with an accent. She said it's not necessary for you to speak with an accent. She's the only one that doesn't. All the rest of it, she claimed that it was laziness or whatever. But though I didn't speak English until I went to school, and that was another difficult thing, and it was not in the days when it was in or whatever to be a minority. I was brought up to be ashamed of what I was. And that coupled with my alcoholism and my self-worth that was so bad, there wasn't any way I could have stopped from going where I ended up going. Just no way. I lasted in school until the 8th grade. The juvenile hall incident, that was it until I was arrested as an adult. I started drinking outside the house at 13. At 17, I was a full-blown alcoholic in the Los Angeles County General Hospital, being fed intravenously. I had never been able to, the first job I had was stoop labor out in the fields, and then from there I went to a pickle factory, and I'll never forget the pickle factory because there was this large red button that when the glass bottles started coming down the conveyor belt, if one of them fell off, you were to push that button to stop the rest of them from all breaking. And one of the bottles came off the conveyor belt, and I absolutely froze. I could not push that red button for nothing in the world. And I just watched the bottles break and just took my apron off and left and didn't go back anymore. Just didn't go back anymore. And that's just the story of my life, really, in a way. Just freeze, panic. I probably feel, from people that talk to me later, I could have moved and the car wouldn't have hit me, but I just froze. Anyway, I want to get to AA, to the good part, really. At 17, it was over as far as alcohol. I started dabbling into heroin, and I hated needles, and I hated dope fiends. Funny thing, huh? Anyway, I never quit drinking. I just, after I got into heroin, it was not necessary for me to drink that much. But I never was able to say no to a drink. It's not in my experience to have tried to stop, to kick, or to dry out in any way. I felt that I was hell-bent on self-destruction, yet I never verbalized it. I was not suicidal when I was practicing consciously. I didn't know how to live. In 1960, I was arrested for the last time with my then husband, and we were arrested coming back from Mexico. I worked as a B-girl in the Wilmington and San Pedro area of South California. So I drank all the waking time. And in a way, the incident that put me in the hospital, I have no recollection. I don't know how that came about. I was not feeling bad. I had youth on my side at that time. I had never experienced a hangover. I had never experienced any bad physical feelings from alcohol. As I said, I was a daily drinker because I worked in the bars. And alcohol held me together. Without drinking, there is no way in the world I could have worked in the bar. No way. Without it, I was catatonic. I could not talk to you. I couldn't communicate at all. But with alcohol, it was really just the lubrication I needed. I don't know at what point I crossed over this line. I feel that what happened when I awakened and ended up in the old County General Hospital in East Los Angeles on State Street, that it was my body's way of saying it can't take anymore. Because I came to, and I was told I had 106 fever. I was paralyzed. I could not move. And I had passed out the night before just as usual. There was nothing out of the ordinary, though I was drinking at that time vodka by the tumblers full during a night session. I had a tremendous capacity, which only towards the end, just before the end, diminished. And I say just before the end because I only had 30 days of drinking after I was released. from doing time. But before then, it had not crested and become, where it took a little bit. It always took a lot of everything, of alcohol, of food, men, whatever. I had an insatiable appetite. That has been calmed beautifully with the program, and I'm so grateful. In 1960, as I say, we were arrested coming back from Mexico. I had abandoned my children to my mother. We were fugitives. The order was to shoot us on sight. I could not tell my mother where we were, just send her stolen money home to take care of the kids to compensate the tremendous guilt that I felt. In 1960, it all came to an end. Just prior to that, I'll just talk two incidents and then get really into the recovery, that were things that were building up to my starting of recovery. It's not in my experience to have had any psychiatric consultation before AA. There was no program in the county jail. You just did it in the cell. I was maximum security, so I was not able to leave to go to any honor farm or see any sunshine or see any air. And the reason that came about is, again, this inability to surrender. I just could not, even when they said stop or whatever, I had to automatically run. There just was no, I just couldn't say, okay, I give up. I just couldn't. It nearly killed me, even after AA. But this, we were in Mexico, and at this point, I have no idea how much drugs we were using. There was just no need to count anymore. You don't count up to nothing. Anyway, I had the last overdose that I had, and at this point, as I say, it was not suicidal. I wanted to reach that point just before you go. I wanted that stupor, that feeling of no feeling, which is the only way I can describe the way I drank, was to feel no feelings, except I just would feel all the wrong feelings and fight, as I say, and get in a lot of trouble. So that for me, heroin was a great panacea. It really afforded me to be like the living dead. I didn't feel any jealousy. I didn't need to eat. I didn't need to reproduce. I didn't need to do anything. And that was just the way, that was the only way I could handle it. Because I was at that time super sensitive. I believe now with the program, I choose to believe that I am sensitive, which is a give and take thing. There's a plant that's called a sensitive plant. And when you touch it, it dies. And that's what I felt like before. My sponsor gave such an apt description of my life before. It was like a big knife wound, like a big hole in my gut with the wind blowing 100 miles an hour just through that wound. And if any of you have ever been cut and had any wind on it, you know what that feels like. And that's what my whole life felt like before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and for some time after I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll get into that a little later. In this place in Mexico, after I came out of this overdose, soaking wet because my husband had revived me, brought me back, I looked in the mirror and I looked into a vacuum. And when I looked in, there was just nothing in my eyes. It was just empty. And I said, no, it can't be true. And I kept blinking my eyes and looking, and it still stayed empty. But what happened at that moment was what I think the turning point in my life, though now some 15 years later, it doesn't seem very significant, but it was. Because for the first time in my life, when I looked into this vacuum, the thought crossed my mind, what's wrong with me? And I never was able to think that. It was always you people, those people, if they would just leave me alone. It was nothing wrong with me. It was you. And that was such a frightening thought. I just can't explain to you that even under the way I was feeling, that thought just nearly annihilated me. I can't explain it to you. I had to go out and get back into the spoon and get some more heroin to take away that feeling. It was the most frightening feeling at that time that I'd had. And we had had some frightening experiences. Just prior to this, a few weeks, the thing that had gotten us to Mexico, after a robbery and changing cars about 4 times, we ended up in a motel in East Los Angeles waiting for our crime partner to come and pick us up. And when we phoned, somehow, we found out later, but anyway, at that point, they were just right after us. They were just missing the cars. And as we hung up and went back into the motel, I looked, the whole place just lit up, and there was about at least 40 or 50 sheriffs surrounding this motel, going door to door. And I knew they were looking for us. At that point, we just knew it was going to be over, because when they came in the door, we knelt, not in any kind of prayer, just knelt like to get down by the bed. And he had a gun, and the minute the door opened, he was going to open fire, and naturally they would open fire us, and it would finally be over. And I felt that it was a relief, that whatever happens after this had to be better than this life or this existence that I had now, that I thought I was doomed to. I didn't know that there was any way to stop. They went to every room in that motel except ours and left. I'm sure that there was so many that each one thought somebody else had come there because it was the last one. That's the only explanation I can give, because we did find out later, indeed they were after us. The next thing in Mexico, because of course at that point it was ridiculous to think that everyone knew that they were after us except us, you know. I mean, people later told us that the TV would end and there's our wanted things going on the thing after all television was over, you know. I didn't know that. We're so keen and perceptive, you know. Like that old story, we're the last ones to find out. Anyway, that, a few weeks later, the mirror incident, and finally, we're going to come back one more time, right? We were going to go to South America. We're all ready, but I had to come back one more time, and that was the time. They had what looked like to me full-size posters of us, you know, on the walls with serial numbers of guns and the whole thing, and it was all right information for sure, because our crime partner didn't want to go back to the penitentiary. So anyway, he let him know certain things. Anyway, it was the best thing that could have happened in looking back on it. We were nearly killed in a shootout there at the border. I was concealing 2 ounces of heroin, coming back over, and naturally at the juncture point of being arrested, when there's the FBI and the state police, I swallowed it. What else do you do? Except it was not packed to go internally, so that it came open inside of me. And after, at that point, kicking a 5-year habit that I had never kicked and had no idea how much I was using, the habit and the narcotic poisoning on top of it, I nearly died, and was welcoming it, just was welcoming it. I didn't sleep for 72 days and nights. I don't think that's a record. And even with all that misery, and I wasn't going anywhere either. The bond, we had holes on us, but the bond was $52,500, and we're both in. We don't have any runners, right? So we're not going to get out. My brothers are too busy running in another direction. But anyway, it took me 6 months to realize I was not going to get out on bail. 6 months, every day, something's going to happen. Today's the day, because I wasn't sleeping, so that just let me be more, I had to get out. It was the first time in my life in that state of being that I was held down and you weren't going to go anywhere. And I just couldn't believe it, because I was always able to run. I was sentenced to 3 years in the county jail, and 3 armed robberies were left for me to face after I finished the county jail time in Orange County. Consequently, I was never able to settle down to do the 3 years that did me, and that 3 years is just like one long, horrible day and night. But what happened there is that AA found me. And the reason I went to AA were to steal the donuts, to drink the coffee, and to steal the cigarettes that those nice little ladies that came and told the funny stories would bring. You see, even then I had to be entertained. I just felt that it was just so miserable in there. I saw the ladies come back, the little whiners we used to call them. There's that caste system with dope fiends and alcoholics, in there. And it still goes on afterwards, but the clever captain there once, for some disciplinary action at one point, she sentenced me to 30 days in the holding cell, and I'm doing 3 years, and every day I awakened to a new little whiner who was doing 24 hours. She was sentenced to 24 hours and crying. But you know what happened? I realized something at that point, even in that density of this self-centeredness. I had been schooled that when I got busted, it was the end. You just settle down, you do your time, or you do whatever you're going to do. And I couldn't understand why these women, they couldn't understand why they were in jail. And I was able to understand, because some of them would be taken out of their own homes and brought to jail, And they could righteously feel, what am I doing here? They weren't out robbing banks and finance companies and good humor men and drugstores, It didn't matter, It didn't matter. We'd drive Eldorado Baritzas, and the next time be driving a stolen car and not even be able to have had to hawk the gun for some stuff and have to go into a grocery store to steal a butcher knife to go hold up a drugstore with a knife on Wilshire Boulevard. I'm grateful for every incident, though, and everything that happened that got me here. I'm grateful for every incident, though, and everything that happened that got me here. I went to the meetings inside. Even there, I was labeled and segregated. I had, when we weren't truly overcrowded, I had single cell status. I did not come from a groupie type thing. Number one, I didn't trust women, and I was just not the party type thing to, for shooting parties or anything like that. It was just my man and I, and that was it. So I didn't know very many people there, and didn't care to get to know too many. But anyway, I had to get special permission to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in the jail, because I had none of my charges were alcohol related, and that was supposed to be a reason to go. Otherwise, everybody would want to go for the cigarettes and the coffee and stuff. So this is an institution rule. It took me quite a while, and it took me a lot of fighting, but she finally gave in. And on my property slip, number 721536, she stamped in big purple. I think that's the only kind of ink and rubber stamps they use, is that big purple one. AA was stamped on my property slip, along with N, which is narcotics, which screens you from the rest of the visiting thing. You go through a screen and you can barely see your visitor, although I didn't have many. And D for dangerous, and that was because I would run if I got a chance. They don't appreciate things like that. But anyway, I started going to meetings, and I went, I had no, they may as well have been reading from the yellow pages when they read chapter 5. I'd sit in the back of the mess hall and just wait to be entertained for the stories. And to me, what AA were these ladies that had a few drinks, tippled a few, and fell off the bar stool, and that was, maybe lost a job or something. I'd never had a job, that I would cry about losing, let's face it. And so that's the way I listened. But I'm so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous for not screening and having a sincerity machine that you have to go through to make sure that you're really sincere, That word really used to scare me. Come to find out, tracing back, seen in Latin is without, and ser was wax, and they used to sell statues in the old days when they just invented the wheel and the cart. And the statues would go from where you'd buy them from the guy, like you'd buy a used car, and by the time you'd get it home, the sun would have melted the wax that they put in the holes that were cracked in the statue. And so, you'd be cheated, but you'd be a long ways away from the man you bought the statue from. So they made this proclamation, that you must sell these statues now seen said, without any wax. And that's so meaningful to me in AA, because I don't want to be waxy. I don't want to be phony, as it were, even though I was the biggest phony to be able to come here. If I wasn't, I couldn't be here. I couldn't be a part of this fantastic fellowship. But anyway, I was released in custody, and the deputy sheriff that took me from Los Angeles County to Orange County Jail was drunk. And he hated dope fiends, naturally. And he handcuffed me behind my back so tight that my hands were absolutely almost purple black by the time we got to Orange County. But he had to pull off the freeway and throw up. He was so sick. And having this experience with my first encounter with AA, that's what I thought a drunk was. Because it didn't mean anything to me, just that whole thing. It was a terrible blow to my ego getting to Orange County Jail after being in the Los Angeles County Jail for such a long time. I had my little ditty box, my orange crate with my little curtains around it, my own little thing, And I got there and I was just thrown right into a great big padded cell with all the drunks. I had no seniority at all whatsoever, just one of the rest of them, And I'm banging the bars. But anyway, those charges at preliminary hearing were dismissed for lack of evidence. And the lack of evidence was that according to California law, you must have the gun that was used in the holdup and you must have a positive identification. I had gained 50 pounds and my hair was longer than it is now. I did not look at all like that, because we used to have stage makeup also that made for scars and all different kinds of weird things, and I used to dress as a man. So there wasn't really much identification that could be brought down like that. So in the thing for, at this point, my husband had been sentenced to 6 tender lives running wild, and he was in Folsom. I had just done nearly 3 years, so in a way, they figured they had gotten their pound of flesh. But what was so fantastic to me was when the case was dismissed and I was free to go, I had no idea where anything was in Orange County. I didn't even know how to get home. The only reason I ended up in Orange County is because it was on the way to the Mexican San Diego border. That's the only reason, you know. And I was never as frightened when I was finally released that day, because I had been under such tremendous pressure. I could not remember where I was these 3 nights that the armed robbery, that the warrant that they read, I could not remember. And if you don't think there's anything funny, because you go to the penitentiary from Orange County, you can believe that. A woman better not get more felonious than forgery. And even with that, she goes to the joint. So here I was, you know, with 3 armed robberies and the same $52,500 bond. I wasn't going anywhere. And I couldn't understand it. I wanted him to let me get out and go get some more cases, right? Because that's how I have to get money to fight this case. But anyway, I didn't go anywhere, and I was released. There was no feeling of jubilation. There was no feeling of victory. I just was completely drained when it was the biggest shock to me to have the cases be dismissed. But I truly feel, I've had people ask me that, you know, they felt I should have done more time for the things that happened. And that probably is true if we're going for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I feel that the guilt and the remorse that I had for myself for the things that I had done superseded anything the state of California could have done to me. They just couldn't make me feel any worse than I felt about myself. I got out. My family was still using drugs. I had no recollection, or I didn't put it together that I go to AA meetings afterwards. I mean, really, you do this when you're out here free and you can go anywhere you go to and you go to those meetings? No, I thought you just did that in jail, you know. So it never entered my mind to go to a meeting. I lived just in terror all the time because I had an obsession not to take drugs. Not a desire to stop, an obsession not to. And it lasted me all of a week of not taking anything. I came home and my brothers, you know, here, scotch, grass, heroin, whatever. And I said no. And it was not because of any program. It was because not of anything. I just knew that if I ever put another needle in my arm, it was all over. I knew that from the get-go. I had seen one girl in that nearly 3 years that I was there that I thought would make it. And she said, I'm not going to come back. And 4 months later, she came back. I couldn't even recognize her, and I felt, God, if she can't do it, nobody can. And I didn't say it out loud, but I just felt, you know. So I stayed with this horrible feeling of just, with this obsession. And I went right back to the neighborhood where I lived, where people knew me. I nutted on so many people you wouldn't believe it. Walking down the street, they knew me and I knew them, and I just come up like I was somebody else, you know. No, I'm sorry, I don't know who you're talking about. That's not my name. Because I could not say no. There's no way in the world I would have been able to say no to a fix. I didn't even think in terms of a drink. I went to see my father, who my mother had divorced, and I had empathy for the first time with my father, whose heart was broken because my mother had divorced him. We were talking for the first time in my life. I was able to talk to him because I identified with his sorrow. He offered me a drink. I had no recall of AA. I took a drink. He offered me a shot. After that was a can of Olympia beer and then a shot of whiskey a little later. And I didn't feel that, I didn't feel anything come and say, no, you shouldn't be doing this. Didn't even enter my mind. I was so overwhelmed with being able to talk to my father and seeing him sad, and that was the forgiveness that was starting, because I felt for him like I never had. I went home on the bus that night with my dark glasses on and my scarf, which I always wore. I never came out in the daytime. It's like a mole, really. And I got this feeling of warmth and liberation. And I thought, oh my God, how stupid. Of course I'll drink. I had forgotten that I could drink. I was so busy obsessed with not taking any heroin. And that was the beginning of the end, folks. 30 days later, with buku hangovers, blackouts, just coming to, I don't know if any of you ever watched Star Trek, but you know how they come to life in there. That's the way my life was. I was here, I had no idea how I got there, what I was doing, But that's how it felt. And that frightened me, and it got me to a point that I know the problem is that I don't have any money. That's what it is, and I have to make up to my children and to my family for... See, I just believed in material things. I had no concept of any kind of anything else. If you can see it, touch it, or feel it, that's what it has to be. And at this point, I was so inadequate inside that I couldn't do any of those things. So I thought that if I get on consignment some heroin and sell it, then I will be able to make some money and things will be different here. And it took me all of a couple of hours maybe to find the man and get 2 ounces of heroin on consignment. The only thing that happened is that when he put them in my hand, I came completely apart. Totally. I dropped them as they felt like they were on fire when they hit my hand, because I knew there was no way I could take that heroin and not use it. And I ran from there. To this day, I've never seen that guy since. I don't know what he thought happened. Hysterically, I just broke down. And I just knew I'd come to the end and I didn't know where to go or what to do. I had just realized that I couldn't drink, and now I couldn't even do this. I thought I was going insane. But then AA from jail came to me. And the woman had given me a Narcotics Anonymous pamphlet. And I had kept it with me. Through shakedowns and through all kinds of things, I still had that pamphlet that I think I had read through, skimmed through once and felt, man, these people, they've got to be just so inadequate, or else just burn out, that they've got to go to these meetings and not take any, because I just don't believe that there's any way that you can not take anything anymore. Anyway, I called Hollywood 33123, and I had a lady come and pick me up. I don't remember if it was a Friday night or a Sunday afternoon. Those were the first 2 meetings. I don't know which one came first. And I started going to meetings. I went to NA meetings. It was very small then, until there was only one person in this meeting that was clean. One other person that I was fairly sure of. And people were talking about, you can, just as long as you don't shoot any heroin, you can drink terpene hydrate and do all these other things, and it's okay, And I did not know why I felt it was not all right for me, because it says those who keep coming to meetings regularly stay clean. These people kept coming to meetings, but they were not clean. They were clean of heroin. And this is the way it was then. If anything goes except heroin, and you thought you were clean. take pills or whatever, and that's being clean, because you're not putting a needle in your arm. Anyway, that was so frightening to me that I had to run to Alcoholics Anonymous, which had great big meetings, and I was terrified of people. But I was more terrified of being in the environment where people were saying it was okay to take something. Because believe me, I was on very, very shaky ground. I kept going to meetings, and when people would get friendly, I wouldn't go back to that meeting anymore. I worked myself from the greater Los Angeles area out to the valley and then back out to Pomona before I finally broke down. And uncontrollably, there wasn't any sound. It's only been 2 years ago that I was able to have sound when I cried. But just like contorted, just like a kind of a convulsion with my mouth going and just tears coming down in this meeting, because I knew I couldn't run anymore. You know, I couldn't speak the first year that I came to AA. I couldn't. From that point on, I realized, come to think of it, the whole thing of not knowing where I went back to the second meeting, feeling that terrified of people. But in reflecting back on it, I was about 5 years sober when I looked back and realized what kept me going back. Because usually they say you keep coming back and then you can use the meeting like for a dumping ground. You can just, pour out all this stuff and the group takes it and that's all right and you're relieved of it. I couldn't do that, But what happened is that when I was physically in a meeting, I did not have the obsession. The power in the group with the people collectively together was so strong that I did not have the obsession. And that's the only time I was relieved of it. And that's why I kept going back. But it wasn't the conviviality. It wasn't the friendship. I'd never shaken hands in my life. Shake hands, Intimate, yes, you get, but you don't shake hands, But anyway, this was with 14, 15 meetings a week and an obsession not to drink, not a desire not to. At a year, I had some kind of a mental thing. I don't know what happened. But I lost a day and a night, and I have no idea what happened or why it happened. I didn't take any drugs. But I had been obsessed with the death wish about the prior 2 months. I would come home from meetings and know I'm not like those people. It's never going to be like that for me. I just don't understand what they're talking about. I don't understand any of it. They just all seem so happy and wonderful, and I came to AA and walked through those doors, and it's just been fantastic ever since. 3 families have come back to me, and walked those 12 golden stairs, And I was still out there hurting. Anyway, at this point, my last disappointment, first and last disappointment with AA, I made a decision to commit suicide. Stone cold, sober, and clean, and I felt the first relief that I ever had while coming to meetings. Well, it didn't work, obviously. But anyway, I went to a meeting. I came to during this blackout, whatever this mental blackout was, and I was in my then permanent convertible car that I'd paid $5 for and bought it from this meth freak. The front were club chairs, from a living room, held up on bricks. But it took a lot of people to meetings, and it kept me going, It was when it rained, this guy had given me one of those camouflage parachute type things that you could put over and fix it up so I wouldn't get wet inside. But anyway, that car I ended up in the parking lot at Temple and Broadway of the county jail, looking straight up as I came to out of whatever it was. And you know, when you look up this high right now, I can't see any of you people at all. And I came to like this, and there was just something but stars and the sky and stuff, and I thought, oh my God, I've made it. You know, I thought I was up there. God, it was the most fantastic feeling. And then all of a sudden, my eyes came down, and here's the Hall of Justice, and I'm on Temple and Broadway, and I'm in a reserve sheriff for Peter Pitches' place, you know. And I had no idea how I'd gotten there. Absolutely no idea. I could not get to an AA meeting fast enough. It was so frightening to me, because I thought, and it was pure vanity, I thought, my God, I have wished myself dead so hard that I have, you know, something is turned off up here, and now I might end up walking around not knowing who I was, where I was going, and just one of those people you see kind of walking around in the streets, you know. And I couldn't stand that vision or that picture of me, you know. I had to be in control and know at all times what I was doing. So that was the impetus that got me to this meeting. I was there at 54th and Crenshaw. How I thought Temple and Broadway to 54th and Crenshaw, that's quite a distance. How I thought that was the closest one I could get to. You can see where my head was. I've never been to that meeting since. But they started a new thing at that point. They used to always read the 5th chapter from the big book. And at this point, they started with just the paper. And it's the first time I'd seen him. So I came here with such open-mindedness after this excursion to the great unknown wherever I was. And they were reading the 5th chapter from that piece of paper. And I was at the back of the meeting, I was thinking, how fantastic! Something new! Now mind you, I've been going to 14, 15 meetings with a step study in there too. I heard for the first time in my life, and I could not wait till that meeting ended to get up to that podium and get that piece of paper and find out what they were reading. Well, you know what happened. I got up there and I thought, it's nothing new. This is just out of the big book. They just put it on this piece of paper. And that was the last disappointment and the beginning of a love affair that I've had with Alcoholics Anonymous. At that point, I did get a sponsor. At this point, where this death wish and all this had happened was at step 3, mind you, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. I had no understanding of any God, could not even say the Lord's Prayer, and that's where the nuttiness came in. I would not go. It was easier to stay stuck on step 3 than to have to pick up that pencil and paper if you go to 4. And that's what happens when you finish 3. You're supposed to go to 4. But anyway, that was where the insanity came and left and went, and it has been a traumatic thing for a lot of years in there, but never, at about 2.5 years sober, I was relieved of the obsession. That's my recall. It may have I don't know when, like the big book says, we don't even know what day it happens. It just comes. But I was fulfilling the steps knowing that even if I worked them, it wouldn't do any good. You know, it just wouldn't do any good. It couldn't possibly work. And it fooled me because it did work. I can't tell you how I feel, the gratitude that I feel for this program, no matter what, not just these, you know, nice little benefits to be flown up and given a room, you know, and do all that. Doesn't matter, you know. I'm still on answering service in the middle of the night, but my head and my mind are so at ease, it doesn't matter if someone calls at 3 or 4 in the morning. I can go right to sleep after I have given direction or guidance or whatever. I can go right back to sleep. It's no problem. The bed where I sleep, it just shows right where I was sleeping. I used to rip them apart when I first came on the program and existed on 3 hours of sleep. Insomnia, it's totally of the mind. That's what it is. Totally of the mind. And I was besieged with fears when I came here. This program with its 12 steps has afforded me the courage to be imperfect. And it's such a relief. God, it's such a relief. I've learned through this program that true humility was not some abject, groveling, self-despising spirit. It is but a right estimate of ourselves as God sees us. There's a funny little excerpt that I'll give to you about something that happened in a meeting, and I came to my friend who's 70 years old and went into business for the first time when she was 55. I want to be like her when she's so full of life and so beautiful, you know. She was the first person outside of AA that I thought that was just for us. How silly, huh? How silly for me to think that we are the only ones endowed with that kind of energy and that kind of thinking. But it's a beautiful relationship I have with this lady. Anyway, she's quite a Western story reader. And I'd come home I forget what it was, talking about Sunday, but anyway, she called to her attention this little story that she had been reading. And in it was about two cowboys who had just been robbed. They'd been done wrong. And they were discussing it. And one of them was talking about, he said, it's just the idea that we were done wrong. You know, and the other guy says, but don't you understand that's the greatest part of it? That they are doing wrong. And he goes into, I don't have my little card here stuff to do verbatim, which is, hopefully it doesn't mess up, I'll get the point, is that doing wrong takes a steady dead lift. It pulls against every force, like the force of gravity at 4 p.m. to do wrong. And to do right is as easy as sticking a needle through the eye of a camel. And the whole thing was that is where, what it was, yes, about the program being, that going out and drinking was the easier, softer way. That's what I was talking about. And I had said that to me the program was the easier, softer way. And it is, and that was what this little story brought out, that doing right is easy. That doing wrong, it takes so much effort, it takes so much energy, it just takes everything you've got, and everything is pulling against it. And yet I used to think that was the way to live. That beauty, wealth, or fame is incompetent to meet the demands of the affections. This helped me very much after my divorce, and should never weigh against the better claims of intellect, goodness, and virtue. Happiness is spiritual, unselfish. Therefore, it cannot exist alone, but requires all mankind to share it. That was so helpful to me when I was going through quite a siege. That the problems that I have, I was at a lecture, and the man was giving a fantastic lecture, and his analogy was the martial arts of Kung Fu and what have you. And he was relating the martial arts to error. I don't choose to think in terms of right or wrong, but error. And that in the martial arts, the first thing is deception. The second thing is retaliation, and then shock. And the deception is, as he was explaining it, was that when someone goes to attack somebody the conventional way, whatever, supposedly the person that is into the martial arts backs off a little, and that gives the other person the feeling that, you know, he has got the upper hand. And then, of course, it's the deception, and then the loud hollering comes, and then they whap, quack, take care of it. Okay, the deception, And then the retaliation when the guy comes back, and then the shock is when the other person finds himself on the floor, if they're lucky. But that is exactly the way that error in my life attacks me, if you will. I'm deceived. And then after I found out I've been deceived, I want to retaliate. And at that point I get quite a big shock. And I just am so grateful to be able to realize that now, and it's only because of this program. They say practice makes progress in this program. In music lessons, I suppose sometimes it said practice makes perfect. But even here, of late, I found another definition for perfection. I used to be very much afraid of that word. But now, to me, and I'm only speaking for myself, perfection equals completely good. And there have been moments on this program when I have felt completely good. And that's a miracle. It's just a flat out right miracle. That the trauma, because I lived with a lot of sorrow after AA, I finally got to the point where sorrow was salutary. I had to go to the dictionary to look up that word. But salutary means promoting health, it's a curative, and it produces a beneficial effect. And the other thing is that sorrow never leaves you where it's found you. And that's kind of good to know sometimes. But the other thing I found out is that now that I know what sorrow is, I don't have to be sorrowful anymore. I have nearly died physically before the program. I nearly died in a cancer operation after the program. I just know that the life that I have now, I shouldn't be here by all rights. None of us should be here. We are all miracles. Just the life that I can now experience, even though it is solitary. I don't have an obsession in that area either. I just am so grateful. I'm a grandmother. I'm enjoying it. Just enjoying the hell out of it. It's the most fantastic experience. I missed it all because I was ill. But just to watch this child who, by all medical reasons, was not supposed to even be able to be conceived, to see her now 16 months old, just being brought up in a loving environment. Because the rage that I held down inside, I did not pass on and did not batter my children, but that was a lot of rage that I put on myself too, so they don't have that experience. So that will not be passed on anymore. My 4 brothers have followed the example that AA has set. My daughter has followed the example that AA can set in an individual, and they are in the program. My ex-husband was able to follow it in his own way wherever he is. And I just am so grateful to this program that now I feel that I'm at a point I've never been at before. And it's just such a freedom and such a good feeling inside. And I owe every bit of it, all of it, to Alcoholics Anonymous. The jobs, everything. The first job I had was addressing envelopes a penny apiece. And I did it good and I did it hard. I got calluses on my fingers. Then I was able to get a typewriter because I'd learned the home keys in a reform school. And I was eternally grateful for that. I realized in reform school that I liked studies and I liked books. I'm an avid reader. I love books. It wasn't any big deal for me. They told me to read the big book. I hated you people, and so the big book, I had no argument with it. It was my textbook on living. It's fantastic. There's still, all the answers are there. But there's other things. There's the 12 steps and 12 traditions. There's all the 30-some pamphlets. This, I believe, when it says God will constantly disclose to us things. In our experience, we keep disclosing. And the central service back there, whatever, prints these things and gets them up. That's still experience. and I must keep open to it at all times. And I just love AA, and I love you people, whether you like it or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.